Hello, Internet. I am Corione, your witch in residence here on YouTube. And I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I sat down and I watched the movie, and they make it abundantly clear in the movie that this is supposed to be Rocket's backstory. But I have a bit of an alternative take, and I'm going to take you through it. Now, just to put it out there, I'm going to ask you about dropping a like, dropping a subscribe, maybe posting a comment or two. It really helps the channel. I'm not going to bore you. With that obligatory ritual out of the way, look, I get that this is supposed to be Rocket Raccoon's backstory and kind of putting a cap on this era of the Guardians. And it does do that very well. But I give you an alternative message of this movie. Every single person in this movie is dealing with trauma and trying to reach its closure with that trauma. Rocket is quite literally the subject of animal testing and a fair bit of cruelty towards an animal, and then ascension, really. We have Nebula, who has been disassembled and reassembled more times than we can count. We have Groot, that has been destroyed and rebuilt, and he's just coming to terms with being who he is again in this. We have Mantis, who has always gone along with what other people want, and her trauma has a lot to do with her never finding her own footing. And we have Gamora, who has not experienced years that the rest of the team has, right? We have all of these characters. We have Drax, who lost his whole family and became the Destroyer because his family died. And he dealt with that grief by destroying things. In fact, if you take a look at each of the characters, none of them dealt with their grief, their trauma in a healthy way. Okay. Gamora, losing years, decided to ignore the problem. Okay, so we have denial there, right? Peter at the start of this movie is in a deep depression as characterized by his excessive drinking, right? We have Rocket, who turned into a jerk, which worked for him for a long period of time, but is not an effective means of dealing with your problems, right? Um, and we have Nebula, who for a long time was a violent sociopath, right? Everybody dealt with their trauma. Oh, and of course we have Drax, who decided to destroy, all what he considers evil in the universe. While I appreciate the passion for stopping evil things, I'm a big fan of stopping evil things. It's not necessarily the best way to deal with your grief. And we see Rocket's pain, his trauma on screen. They take us through it. And it's terrifying and it's sad. And it, you know, I brought my daughter to the movie with us. It's the first time I've let her see a kind of more grown up, more mature superhero movie. And I'm really glad she did, because afterwards she said the bad guy was the bad guy because he caused harm to others and wasn't ready to accept that he was a bad guy for doing so. And I thought that was a very mature way for her to see how evil can take many different forms. But she also got to see each of those characters deal with their trauma. Star-Lord, by the end, is able to acknowledge that this Gamora is not his Gamora, but also let her know that he does still care, even if that isn't his Gamora. We have Drax finding kids and realizing that while he is still Drax the Destroyer, he makes an even better Drax the Father. We have Rocket, who is able to move past the wrongs in his past and become the leader that he should be, which is great, right? We have Groot coming to terms with being part of his family and being part of this oddball unit. All right, we have Gamora accepting that she can be loved, right? We have Nebula acknowledging that not only can she be loved, but that she is loved and that she loves others and she's able to see others as caring and compassionate human beings. Well, alien beings, I suppose. Every one of the characters goes through stuff. Hell, even Cosmo at the end finds out that Cosmo is actually a good boy. So, and a good dog. Well, actually, I think Cosmo's a girl, so good girl. Okay. Um, the point is, each of those characters has their moment where they're able to work through their trauma in this and come out the other side. And it made me want to talk about trauma because let's look, I know for some people that word carries a lot of baggage and they hear it too much about very minor things, but let's use it in the appropriate context, okay? Trauma is things that have happened in your past that affect you negatively today, okay? I'm going to give you an absolutely perfect example from my life, okay? When I was younger, I was training to be a fencer, a sword fighter. And I took significant damage to my knee, and I was never going to be able to fight the same way again. I basically lost out on my Olympic dreams and the rest of my dreams at that time. And I had to walk away from it all. But, and to this day, it still hurts. And when I've had a hurting week or hurting month, I can turn into quite the jerk, right? I become, the Gregory House of the IT world, where I'm popping pain meds and I'm angry all the time and I'm treating others with disrespect. And sometimes I do need to be reminded, hey, man, get yourself under control, because you're turning into a jerk. And that's something I have to deal with, right? It's something I have to remember, that when I'm hurting like that, it's not other people's fault. It's not anyone's fault that the accident happened, but it is my responsibility to still treat others with respect. Okay. This is something that I think needs to be reminded to people, that you cannot be at fault, but still be responsible. Okay. And that's something I think that we deal with a lot when it comes to traumatic issues, is what happened to you was not your fault, but it is unfortunately your responsibility to react to those manners, like to what happened, in a meaningful and respectful way to the others around you. Okay. And to yourself. Okay. Because it does you no good to drink yourself into oblivion, or, you know, um, find a local dealer and buy out their stock. It does, however, do good to you to figure out your stuff and remember that the pains of your past don't need to define you. You define you. Okay? You decide for yourself what is important in your life and what is going to define you. And not just how you see you, but how others see you as well. All of that is wrapped into how you choose to see yourself. Okay? Do not allow your trauma to become your identity. Do not allow any one thing to become your identity. Allow your identity to be your identity. It should be this beautiful mosaic of all the pieces of your life that people get to see and be on display and wonder at. Because every single one of you is a unique and amazing piece of emotional and spiritual art, and everyone should get a chance to see it. Okay? And I know that sounds cheesy. I know it sounds kind of lame, but it's true. Okay? It's true that whether you have burn marks from terrible events in your past, or you are constantly emotionally down, you matter. Okay? And you are beautiful when you choose to be. Okay? One of the things that I have said to many a young lady who didn't realize it at the time but needed to hear it was that all women are beautiful, but not all women realize how they are beautiful. Okay? This is a truth. So take that time, okay? Take a look at yourself and the past terrible stuff that you have been through, and ask yourself how much of that, how many of your behaviors are defining you based on that singular event, okay? Um, I've talked about some of the absolutely ridiculous things that have happened to me in my life. Some of them are hilarious, and some of them are just would bring tears to your eyes. And I'm not going to do that to you this morning. There's no point in doing it to you this morning. Not on a wonderful June morning. Okay, but each of you is capable of fantastically wonderful things if you're willing to deal with what happened in the past and move on from it and grow from it. Okay. Um, what I realized when I was never going to sword fight like that again was that I would have to train my mind differently now. That while I wasn't always going to be the physical powerhouse and the speed freak that I was, I could be the wise trainer to the newest generation of sword fighters. I could look at some of my other gifts, my skill with the computer, my ability to talk to you, and put those to work for me because that's what was important at that time. Okay. And that's what I've done. So, in a lot of ways, yes, I have some painful stuff in my past, but I fuel that to, I use it as fuel to become more of a success. And you guys can too. Okay. So let's talk about in the comments the stuff that has messed you up, but that you got up from and it made you a better person than what happened before because of the realizations that you made. Let's show everybody else in the chat examples of terrible stuff that can move you towards wonderful ends. Because I'm willing to bet if each of you sit down and think about it, all of you have done something like that. All of you have had a shitty experience with a parent that taught you not to do that. And when you became a parent yourself, you took an opposite approach and had a wonderful result with your kid. Or you had a terrible event at work where somebody, like your boss, let you go because of something stupid that happened. And then when you were in charge of people, you made sure that they never had that experience. Or you had a terrible situation with your girlfriend, and when somebody else was going through it, you were able to go, hey man, I've been where you are. This is where it leads. Let's get out of here together. Okay. I bet you each one of you has a story like that, and let's tell them in the comments. Let's start that conversation because we can all learn from that and we can all grow. And somebody in the chat who is going through something right now might see some of those stories and go, oh my gods, I can do that. I can get out of this. I can learn from what others have gone through and not make those same mistakes. And if we can do that for just one person, one human being, we will have changed a life today. So consider doing something wonderful. Consider changing a life for a better today. Guys, I want to thank you so much. You've been amazing as always. Merry meet, merry part, merry meet again. Take care, everybody.